Have you ever heard of a vertical slice? It's the name of a demo that we make at the end of pre-production during game development, and it's called vertical slice for a very particular reason. Now before we get to that, some ancient history, because in the 70s and 80s and 90s, games were developed kind of all in one go from start to finish, and nobody outside of the team really had any idea what was being made until the end, and neither did some of the people inside the team. But as games became more complex, so therefore the teams grew and the timescales grew and the costs grew, which meant that the game industry needed to invite in business people and investors, and they definitely wanted to know what it was they were getting for their money. And it wasn't even just for the benefit of the business people. As the teams grew in size, so it became harder to maintain a cohesive vision of what was being made. And so around about the PlayStation 2 generation, teams started making a demo around about a third of the way through, but making a demo of a game that is in development is no mean feat. It's not like making a one-off t-shirt before you print another 100. Video games are a collection of systems, and that's why it was always the case that you didn't know what you got until the end, because you had to wait for all of the systems to be made before you could figure that out. So people ask the question, what is the minimum we need to do to communicate the vision to the team and get the buy-in from the business people? And they started thinking about the game as if it was a cake with multiple layers, and what they needed was a very thin slice, a vertical slice, representing every layer of the game in its smallest form. We might have 20 weapons in the game. We don't have 20 weapons in the vertical slice though. We have maybe 2 or 3, because that's enough to show off the mechanics of the weapon, but also the mechanics of changing weapons. Now sometimes when you're playing a game, you can spot the area that they used for their vertical slice. In Resident Evil 4, for example, it was reportedly the village scene at the beginning of the game. And that makes complete sense because it shows off the new combat gameplay, the environmental hazards using ladders and furniture to block windows, and the new complex enemy behaviour. It also shows off a number of weapons and different enemy types. And as a showcase for the revolution that Capcom was planning with Resident Evil 4, it was a great showcase for investors and team members. Now in some cases, a vertical slice can cause a team to slightly alter their vision. It was reported, for example, that Last of Us Part 2 began life with open world aspirations. The final game was much more like the original, was more linear. But when you're playing, make a note of the downtown Seattle section, day one of Ellie's campaign, and notice all of the open world elements that it has and how inconsistent it is with the rest of the game. I bet that was their vertical slice, and I reckon that by choosing that section they were able to prove out the pros and cons of that approach and made a different choice for the final game.